It was the rematch that we were all waiting for. Artur Beterbiev against Dmitry Bivol for the undisputed light heavyweight championship. And it did not disappoint. Just a fantastic fight. And a fantastic card. And we had a couple of issues. A couple guys pulling out because of illness within 48 hours of the fight. So it wasn't exactly what it could have been, but still a fantastic night of fights. Let's start from the top, and then we'll go back to the bottom and kind of work our way up. Artur Beterbiev against Dmitry Bivol. We have a new undisputed light heavyweight champion as Dmitry Bivol comes away with the unanimous decision victory. Right? No, majority decision victory. Sorry. This was another just brilliant fight from both of these guys. And it was just such an exhibition of why these two are the two best in this division and two of the top 10 fighters in the world right now. Just period. End of story. It was fantastic. And the thing, we've talked about this a little bit before, where in the UFC or in MMA, if it's 3 rounds or even if it's 5 rounds, you don't really have time to get that story play out. In boxing, you do. And there was the story to this one. In the early going, Beterbiev, with that pressure and the power that he was he was able to take over by around the 3rd round and really get control of those middle rounds. And it's just this stalking nature. And when he is going, it's so tough to keep him off of you. And Bivol just couldn't, really. And Bivol has such an amazing jab, and we'll get to that in a little bit, but there was no way of stopping Beterbiev as he was coming in, and he was kind of just walking him down and really landing some very clean, very big punches and starting to kind of take over as the fight was playing out. But then something switched for Dmitry Bivol. He really started using his movement, and that elite level jab that he had really started to set everything up and kind of stopping Beterbiev in his tracks, and allowed Bivol to get into that flow, get into that rhythm, and really start to take over as we got into the latter part of this fight and then into the championship rounds. It was an excellent showing from Dmitry Bivol and just showed everything that he could be. This was the best version of Dmitry Bivol that you could have possibly seen on Saturday night. It is, when it is going, it is crisp movement. All of the punches, like it's technically sound. And we talked about it in the first one. It's oversimplifying it to say it's a brawler against a boxer, really. But that's what Bivol basically turned this into, is that he was using his slick style and his speed and his jab while Beterbiev was trying to hunt him down and trying to get things kind of brought back. And when you look at the scorecards, it's going to show like a couple of big chunks as like, okay, well, this guy dominated here and then this guy dominated here. And that wasn't always the case. It did kind of feel like a lot of these rounds were close, but it would just be like Beterbiev in a couple of them, I believe it was the 10th, Beterbiev is kind of walking him down and landing a few good punches and a few good shots, and he's kind of controlling the round, but then Bivol just sits down, lands a jab, and lands this 3-punch combo, and all 3 of those punches are the biggest punches that landed in that round. And so Beterbiev controlled probably 2.5 minutes of the 3-minute round, but Bivol, the 30 seconds that he controlled were significantly more impactful than what Beterbiev did. And so he was able to win some rounds that way and really start to build that up and build up a bit of a nest egg for him as it was going on. It was an excellent game plan from Bivol, and for Beterbiev, like, he has fantastic power, but he did look slower, and he looked smaller than Bivol. And I mean, that's not new. We saw that in the first fight too, but like, Bivol was in incredible shape, and it was just, he was moving around, and Beterbiev he looked like the slower fighter in this one. And honestly, like, he looked like a 40-year-old fighter. And that's not to say I think he is old and washed by any stretch of the imagination. I think if Beterbiev fought that fight against almost anyone else in the world, he probably would have won. But Bivol was just on another level right now, and he got better as the fight went on. Bivol did, sorry. He paced himself in the middle rounds, and that really did help him as the fight kind of went on. And so he was, rightfully so, the champion again, in an undisputed fashion in the light heavyweight division. And so now what is next? We're going to officially talk about that for us on Friday's podcast and YouTube video, looking at the fights to make coming off of this gigantic fight card. First blush, I think you kind of got to do this again. Beterbiev, they asked him, do you want to do the third time? He's like, I didn't want to do it the second time. But Bivol talking about how he has a few injury issues and things like that. So maybe they take some time off, but I think you have to roll with this one again. And it puts Benavidez in a bit of a difficult spot that we had kind of talked about before. So a lot to kind of go through as we get ready for what is next for all of these guys. I do think that you should probably go with Bivol against Beterbiev one more time and just figure this whole thing out. If Bivol does want a little bit of extra time, I would imagine Beterbiev does too. I think when you see how his kind of career has gone, this was the quickest turnaround he had in a really, really long time. And I would imagine he wants a bit of a break as well. So I could see these guys just kind of stepping away from the picture for a little bit and letting a few other guys step up. So we'll see what happens coming off of that one. We stay in the light heavyweight division as we go to how the main card started. It was with Callum Smith taking on Joshua Buatsi in the light heavyweight division. This was an incredible fight. Honestly, a fight of the year candidate to start the show off. They both had some very, very good moments and both landed huge at various different points in this fight. And there were a lot of times, okay, this guy starting to pull ahead here. Oh no, now this guy's starting to pull ahead. Okay, no, you never really knew who was going to take it from one moment to the next. It was an incredible fight. Smith really starts to pull ahead with that great body work that he was doing, and really starting to dig those shots was really starting to pay off for him as the fight went on. And he was building up some momentum, and then he got absolutely drilled after a dominant round in the sixth, and that seemed like, it felt like that was the moment where Smith was about to take over, and then Buatsi comes back and just makes him cross-eyed for a sec and drills him with a picture-perfect punch that basically stopped the momentum in the tracks, and then it's back and forth we go again. And I think that was the real story of this fight, is that once it looked like one guy was starting to pull ahead, the other would just come in and land a hellacious blow and take the fight back for them. And then they're starting to build it, and then the other guy, a huge shot, and now they're bringing it, and it was that way back and forth the whole time. So no one was really able to pull ahead in this fight, which makes 119-110 one of the most ridiculous scorecards I have ever seen in my life. I tweeted it out at the time that it was the worst scorecard I've seen in my life. It was topped a few short hours later, but that it was horrendous. That is a scorecard that you write down before the night starts. You have to give just every millisecond of every round, like just any possible swing moment. Nope, got to go to that guy. Like there's just no way you can do that. And so that was a real bummer. And it's something we talked about the last Bivol Beterbiev fight, where there was a bit of a cloud because of some judging controversies. And it pops up here after what was a fantastic fight. The right guy wins with Smith getting the victory, but this was a horrendous judges' scorecard there. We then get to the big boys, as it was Zhilei Zhang taking on Agit Kabayal in, again, a fun heavyweight just slugfest. They both brought it early on. I thought Zhang was using his reach very, very effectively. Like, he is a monster of a human being, and he had that size. And so in the first round, anytime Kabayal is coming in, he's landing a quick jab and landing a couple shots off of that, and kind of like keeping Kabayal in his spot. And so he's using the size advantage that way, which is what I think you should do. But then Kabayal kind of understood that and also recognized, like, I can deal with this. And if I can't, like, I'm going to lose anyway. So I have to get through this. And he kind of forced Zhang into a bit of a volume fight. And so, because he was constantly pressuring and constantly coming forward and trying to initiate. And he wasn't getting the better of these exchanges in the beginning because Zhang is countering immediately, landing a couple of quick shots and trying to keep him at bay. But Kabayal was very smart in just making him do that a lot and starting to wear Zhang down a little bit. And so he is looking exhausted and looking worn out, and then still lands just a ferocious knockdown in the fifth round. Like, he does. He looks beat, but he still has that great power. And it was so interesting to watch him. Like, he's kind of in zombie mode. And then he just put 3 punches that are the most crisp, beautiful punches you've seen at heavyweight in a decade. And then he goes back to being a zombie. It's like, how did you... What? Like, where did that come from? And so he did that there in the 5th round. And still landing with that big power. And they were mentioning on the broadcast, like if he's going to get any of these rounds, it's going to have to be in the first minute, because he would come out in the first minute and look good, and then it would start to wear. And then it would really start to wear, and it would break down, and then it ends up being what it was. But Kabayal, eventually, Zhang is just like, he doesn't have the jab. He doesn't have the volume or the power, again, to keep Kabayal off of him for extended periods of time. Kabayal is able to get inside, and then great work with the body shots, gets the body shot KO, and just an absolute show of pain by Zhang as he just rears back and just, after the shot, and he gets up at 10.5. But the fight is called at that point. Just very, very impressive performance from Kabayal. Fantastic hand speed. He was really, really aggressive. And once he figured out how to get inside, it was wraps from that point on. He did an unbelievable job of doing that and kind of forcing Zhang, even while losing, forcing Zhang into a fight that he wasn't comfortable with and dragging him into some of those deep waters a little bit earlier on. So I thought a phenomenal game plan from the Kabayal side. And once that really started to get going, Zhang just couldn't keep Kabayal off of him as that fight went on. Israil Madrimov taking on Vergil Ortiz. This was another one. It was a very, very fun fight between these two, and a very interesting chess match, as Madrimov is showing great movement early on. And Ortiz was kind of just chasing him for the whole time. And because Madrimov, it's the constant movement, it's the bouncing around, it's the circling around and everything like that, Ortiz is never able to settle in and land any of his shots. He's kind of just chasing him the whole time. And it's not really working out in that sort of a way. And so he's chasing him down, and he's not able to settle up on any of his punches. And so Madrimov isn't doing a whole lot to win the fight, but Ortiz can't do a thing because he can't catch up to the guy. And so Madrimov is just landing these little shots and starting to accumulate these rounds. But then, like, it's tiring to do that. And I don't know if Madrimov just wore out, or if he just decided he needed to start throwing with a bit more impact. But then it turned into a little bit more of a phone booth fight, and from there, Ortiz just took over. Ortiz's defense was really solid, really accurate with his power punches. Like, the second that Madrimov, either a hand would slip down because he's about to set something up, or just a moment of weakness or sloppiness or adjusting position or whatever, and the second that hand would come down just an inch, Ortiz was there with just a piston shot to really land on him very, very hard. But Ortiz covers up really well. The accuracy is excellent. I was saying before, I think the sky's the limit for this kid. I think that there is a very, very talented fighter in there, and Madrimov's a tough guy to look good against. This honestly, not that Terence Crawford needs more of a boost, but this makes the Crawford performance back in August kind of makes a little bit more sense when you see how difficult it is for someone to look good against Madrimov. So it's an impressive showing still for Ortiz, as he was finally able to get Madrimov to settle down and settle into his fight. I would have liked to have seen Ortiz cut the ring off a little bit better instead of chasing, but it was still a really, really impressive performance. And Madrimov, he just couldn't deal with the pressure of Ortiz once it really started to slow, and you're just kind of being chased around the ring the whole time. He just couldn't deal with that power either in that bout. Then we get to another intriguing one. Carlos Adames taking on Hamzah Sheeraz in what will go down as a fight from this card. Sheeraz, it felt like he was just one punch short on every combo that he was doing. And his promoter was getting up there and yelling, which we saw a lot in this. Don't do that. And I understand why you're doing that, but you could simply not. Like, if I'm a trainer, I want anything I can grab and just throw it at you. Like, I'm trying to give technical advice, and so I don't need you worrying about whatever and just be like, just come forward. Like, no, I'm trying to help this man not get bludgeoned to death and try to pick up a victory here. We can worry about you do the promoting later. Right now, this is our moment. So if you could kindly shut the hell up, that would be great. We saw way too many promoters getting into corners tonight. On Saturday afternoon. But Sheeraz apparently had a broken hand. Like, it got pretty messed up, it seemed like, when they would just kind of cut to it. He was pretty messed up. And so because of that, he wasn't throwing in the way that you would want to. He has a really good jab, and he's really tall for this weight class. And so you could see why there was excitement level about him. Or around him anyway. But it just felt like every time he would land a combo, you just wanted one more kind of exclamation point to put it forward. And instead, it was allowing Adames to kind of get inside and get that pressure up and start to steal these rounds, because the volume is kind of the same, because Sheeraz is about one punch short and it's the biggest one, and Adames has no problem landing the biggest ones. So it was, again, a very interesting chess match to watch and to see it play out, because Sheeraz was having great effect with that jab, and you just wish that there was a bit more following it up. And potentially that is because of the handbrake, but you just wish there was a little bit more behind that to be able to kind of keep that pressure going for him and build a little bit of that momentum. Instead, it makes the volume matchup about 50-50, and Adames is getting inside and landing some great power shots. And again, really kept Sheeraz on the back foot the whole time. And I thought really started to accumulate rounds. And again, another horrendous scorecard at the end of this, as it ends up being a draw. That there was, again, it was a close fight. Like, we're not talking 120, 109 or anything like that on the, or 108, I guess, on this card, but it was very clear who the winner of this fight was. And for there to be two cards that went against that is just, it's inexcusable. It is horrendous. And it's not going to be a gigantic cloud over this whole thing, but again, it is going to be a bit of a frustration for a lot of fans, and at least a talking point coming out of what was otherwise a phenomenal card. And then we get to the fights that were altered by illness. Shakur Stevenson taking on Josh Paddley. This was not supposed to be him. It was supposed to be Schofield, but Schofield was sick. His father suggested the poisoning may have been involved. But either way, Josh Paddley steps in. He is a 40-1 underdog, as they said on the broadcast. And this, it was what it was. Paddley wasn't going down without a fight. He was trying to be aggressive. The problem is you're going up against one of the best defensive fighters in the sport, and that's a problem. So, it didn't work for Paddley. He was very clearly outgunned and outmatched, and Shakur Stevenson, some great work to the body, slowing things down, and he eventually does put this one away. The problem is another one where you have a fighter dealing with a hand injury, and so the people who are saying that Stevenson just toys with these fighters, he's not really putting guys away, he's not taking this seriously, he's not doing enough, blah, 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 blah. Those guys still have ammunition, because this fight probably went 3 or 4 rounds longer than it needed to, but Stevenson was dealing with that hand injury, and so he just couldn't follow up on some of these great situations that he was putting himself into, and that became a bit of the story of this fight. Again, he puts Paddley away, he does the call out of Tank Davis after. That is going to be a fight that people are going to be talking about, especially with Davis now fighting this weekend. I think that would be an intriguing fight. I haven't seen a whole lot from Stevenson here that makes you think like, okay, well, now Tank Davis, watch out. But that's still going to be a very fun fight when these two finally lock horns. And then we get to the heavyweight encounter of the evening, as again, this was one of the fights that the whole card was built on. It was going to be Joseph Parker taking on Daniel Dubois. Dubois gets sick on Thursday, and so on 48 hours notice, Martin Bakole steps in. And again, this fight was what you'd expect. It was awful. I mean, it wasn't awful, but it was not competitive. Parker showed great hand speed and technique. Bakole came in at 315 pounds and just wasn't fight ready at all. He came in and got a paycheck. That's what he did. He was not ready for this fight, and most heavyweights aren't on 2 days' notice. I do think that there is a larger conversation to be had about, like, okay, you weren't ready for this fight, and that's fine. It was on 2 days' notice. I don't know if our walking around weight should be 315 regardless of when you have a fight coming up. So I think that there are a few. This did not help Martin Bakole in any way, shape, or form. It has a lot of questions around him. And now it sounds like they're still going to try to do the fight with him out in May, but there is now a lot of pressure on this guy to look very impressive in that next bout, because he got dummied here against who is a very high-level fighter in Joseph Parker. So we will now see what comes from that one. But a strong showing from Joseph Parker, albeit not with the most resistance. So that is how I saw things go down out in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Overall, just an unbelievable day of fights. It was a little long. And that was one note that I had, was you're watching it and you're seeing it was too much of a good thing, was basically what it was. You watch Smith Beterbiev, it's like, man, this is a cracker. This is a fight of the year candidate. This is great. Zhang against Kabayal, this is awesome. There's a chess match going on here. Big bombs being thrown. Okay, this is great. Madrimov against Ortiz, there's a puzzle that Ortiz has to figure out Madrimov, but these are two very high level fighters going at it. And then you get to Hamzah Sheeraz, it's like, fuck. We still have 4 fights to go. This fight, it's good. It's good, but I'm kind of exhausted. And I said to the guys I was watching the fight with, I need like a minus 800 fight right now. Like I need there to be a bit of a spot where I am not so emotionally invested and so focused on this fight for just a little bit. I need to watch and be entertained, but know that a finish is coming at some point and that it's not overly in doubt. So I think we found that 4 was the max. 4 very good fights on a boxing card. We can roll with that. I don't know what I would have done if Stevenson, Paddley, and Bivol and Parker didn't end up having the illness issues that they had, because it did kind of set things up so that, okay, I'm mentally refreshed now going for that main event. It's a thing that pro wrestling has done for a really long time, where you have like a big match and then we have a bit of a let me up, and then a big match and a little bit of a let me up, so you can kind of pace it a little bit instead of just redlining that thing. And now boxing, it has been 3 let me ups in a main event, so I will take this over that. I will take too much of a good thing over not enough good things. But yeah, it was wearing on me by the time we got to Adamas against Sheeraz. But overall, a great night of fights, and sets up now, as we kind of discussed, it sets up a lot of very, very intriguing options down the line. We're going to be breaking those down here on YouTube and in the podcast for as the week kind of rolls on. So normally we do pound for pound rankings at the end of a fight week, like on the Wednesday after. But because we have another pound for pound fighter in there, we're just going to not do that this week. But we are on Friday going to do Thursday or Friday. We are going to do the fights to make coming out of this gigantic card.